Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I feel like it has been so long since I actually sat down and recorded a normal video with you guys. If you missed it, the last 2 weeks I recorded with my brother and that was super fun, so sorry to disappoint this week. I'm just by myself. But this is going to hopefully be a quicker video. I'm going to try to get myself through it. I actually need to post it today. So this is going to be fun. My life has been super busy lately. I started college classes and I'm a math major, so as you can imagine, I spend a lot of time doing that. But in the month of August, which is this video is going to be a recap of everything I read in August, and surprisingly, I read a lot of books. So I guess even as school was starting, I still got a lot of books listened to, and I still had time to read some books. So I'm really excited to share with you guys what I got to read last month. I feel like it was a pretty big reading month. I read 11 books, and that was 3,463 pages. So if I remember correctly, I think that's my biggest month yet as far as pages go. I did listen to a lot of those books, but it still feels like a lot that I read. So let's get into it. The first book that I finished in the month of August was The Blessing of Humility by Jerry Bridges, and I gave this book 5 stars, I believe, yes. So I did not know this whenever I started this book, but he is basically going through the Beatitudes. So he goes through in each chapter, he talks about one of the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. And it talks about how that is the passage in scripture that we can look to figure out what humility is. So I gave this little book 5 stars. I thought it was a great Christian book that everyone should read if you would like to be less prideful and more humble, which should hopefully be every believer. And it gave me such a great understanding of what the Beatitudes are and how we should show them in our lives. And then the second book that I finished was The Last Plea Bargain, and I listened to this one. So this is by Randy Singer, and someone had recommended it to me a while ago because I really like legal dramas. I like that whole figuring out the case and proving your point, and so I really wanted to find some that were clean and honestly one that didn't have to do with murder, but most of them do have to do with that. So I was going through my want to read one day and I saw this book on there, so I thought I would give it a try, and it was on my audio app, so I listened to it. As far as cleanliness goes, I did think that this book did a good job with that. It didn't get too gruesome. There wasn't an overwhelming sense of evil, like one character was just a horrible human being. So I did appreciate that, but the whole legal aspect didn't really turn out super well. In my opinion, I feel like it was too all over the place. You didn't get that pleasurable experience from beginning to end of figuring out the case. There was too much jumping around in different cases kind of that were being figured out. I didn't really like it. There was a little bit of emotion and flirtation between 2 of the characters that was pretty improbable, I felt like. And also the ending was extremely disappointing. So I only gave this one 2 stars and would not recommend this book if you're looking for something like that. And then book number 3 was The Clockwork Ghost by Laura Ruby. So if you look at one of my previous videos, I finished her previous book in the York series and really did not like it and did not recommend it. But I had already bought book number 2, and one of the reasons why I didn't like that book was because from start to the end of the book, you don't really get anywhere. And so you have to read from start of book 1 all the way to the end of book 3 to feel like you're getting somewhere, and I'll get to that in a moment how I felt. But you kind of have to keep reading it because it's all like one connected long book. So I did read this one because I already had the print copy, which I forgot. I have it right here. And I ended up giving it 3 stars. So it was a little bit better than the first one. I did like it slightly better. Still though, just the writing was definitely not on a educated level, I didn't feel like. So I might give it like 2 3/4 stars because the first half was definitely that same slow, boring pace that was in the first one. The second half did get a little bit quick paced. Let me remind myself what it was even about. Oh yeah, it definitely got pretty like tense at certain moments, and so the thing about this book is that there's moments where you enjoy it, but it definitely doesn't make it worth it for the entire thing. but I definitely felt like she was just throwing in all of these extra things, like if a kid was to write a story or draw a picture or something, and just throws in anything that comes to their mind, like made up animals or anything like that. That's how the story came off to me. There is a little bit of some enemies, which I appreciated because in the first one there was no real bad guy, kind of odd. And there was some time travel, which I thought was gonna be kind of weird. Creepy abandoned medical facility on an island, and there was some like scary stuff. I felt kind of scared when reading this, just in the tenseness. One thing I really did like was Aunt Esther. If you have read the books, Aunt Esther is probably my favorite character in there because she's just that amazing aunt who always has food ready for you, always supportive, always has something amazing to say for your life. I thought that was really cool. And Ono, the little machine, is like a Pickett from Fantastic Beasts, and he's so funny and just kind of sits in your pocket and is just a funny little companion, so I like that. And then also, one thing that I noticed in this book was more of the anti-racism stuff that she adds on, which I noticed in the first book a little bit. This book, she goes on this entire like 2-3 page discussion on how evil white people came to America and stole the land. So I didn't like that. So if the author actually would stick to the storyline that she was thinking of and not add in all this extra stuff, you might have a shorter book, but you would definitely have a much better book. So that is what I have to say about That's Not a Very Good Book. And then the next book, I don't even know what number we're on at this point, is Life Flight by Lynette Eason. So I had seen this one a couple of months ago. A lot of the Christian booktubers have read this and reviewed it. I didn't think I was going to read it because people were saying it was one of those Christian mystery type novels, thriller, that was way too scary. And it was very intense. And so I thought, it doesn't really seem like my thing. But then I saw someone review the second book in the series and said it was really good, so I thought, well, I might as well just listen to it because I have listened to most of her other books. I thought it was interesting and suspenseful, but not actually as scary as I expected it to be. Personally, it wasn't gonna like give me nightmares and freak me out, although I know everyone is a little bit different. It is about a killer who is on the loose, like in the woods, and at first it starts out in like a storm on a mountain and she doesn't know where he is, and then they're kind of chasing him throughout the whole book. So it can be a little bit creepy, especially if you think about it as like, wow, this actually could be real life, that there could be like a killer anywhere. That is where it gets a little bit scary. The things that I didn't like about it is that the book, she actually does give the perspective of the killer, like you're kind of in his mind and you get to see what he's thinking as you go through the book. So I didn't really like that because obviously he's a sinful, creepy man who's planning out these murders, so I don't feel like that was a right way to write a book. Also, Lynette Eason, in pretty much every single one of her books that she writes, throws in some kind of romance, and you know I do like a good love story, but it just feels so odd, and it's like if you watch a Hallmark mystery movie, which don't ask me how many of those I've seen, but there's like some kind of murder mystery or something, and it's like, wow, there's a dead body. Oh, look, there's some guy I can fall in love with. And it doesn't connect. It doesn't fit. Like there's this serious thing going on, and then there's this romance going on at the same time. That doesn't seem like it works. So that's how I feel like a lot of Lynette Eason books come off of their romance. So I will definitely read the next one, but I still didn't really like this one. And then the next book was actually a family read about loud that we had been working on for a few months. It is a classic book, Watership Down. Okay, if you've watched this channel, you probably know that I don't really like animal books or talking animal books. I used to like books by animals. Now I'm just not really an animal person since I've gotten older, and this is like the epitome of talking animals, and I don't know, there's supposed to be like something you can see to it unless you ask the author. There's no double meaning, but it feels like he's trying to give double meaning the whole time. I did not enjoy it that much. Other people in my family though did really like it and would say that it was a classic book, but since that's not really my kind of book anyways, I gave it 3 stars. I thought that it was really cool how Richard Adams, he gave a lot of thought into the world that he built, and that was really neat, just the different words that he came up with for different things in their world and how the rabbits might think was cool. And I did think like the personification of the animals was weird, because you really get into like the whole point of the second half of the book is for the rabbits to, or it's all male rabbits, for them to find does and be able to mate. So I've seen other reviews saying it got a little bit odd, and I thought it was kind of odd. But overall, it wasn't terrible. If that's something that is up your alley and you want to read it or read it to your kids, go right ahead. Just not my favorite. Okay, next book is York number 3. I know I keep talking about York, and I keep saying that it's terrible, but this one was called The Map of Stars, also by Laura Ruby. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. So like I said previously, these books are basically all one book, all connected, all on the same storyline, and you don't really get to a conclusion by the end of each book. You don't really get to a conclusion by the end of the series anyways, so do not jump on this train and do not get fooled into trying to finish the series, because even people who said that they really liked the series were very disappointed with the ending as well. And it was just very, very weird. Ending did not fit with the book, and it just wasn't satisfying at all. So I did listen to this one, which I feel like made it a little bit better, because you can kind of forgive the bad writing in her books, but still wouldn't recommend, and definitely will be getting rid of the copies that I have. Next book is Love's Labour's Lost by William Shakespeare. So I've read a lot of Shakespeare. If you go back to the very beginning of my channel, that is like all I was doing when I first started this channel. I was in my senior year of high school and I read tons of Shakespeare. And I am not one for tragedies or any kind of war stuff. Don't like reading about that. So a lot of Shakespeare's books were not my favorite. I did enjoy some of his comedies. I read them in some updated English and really liked just the parody in there and the banter between some of the characters. I'm not going to try to say which one's my favorite because I always get the names mixed up, but I did enjoy that aspect of it. So I was talking to a friend and they said Love's Labour's Lost was their favorite, and so we got a dramatic reading of all of Shakespeare's works on Audible. You can get it all for 1 credit and it's like 96 hours. So I decided to listen to it, and that was definitely a good decision because you enjoy it way better when you can hear people saying it and you can hear their inflection and just hear the banter going back and forth. So I thought that was really cool. And this was an interesting story. They basically all get together in this court and say they're not going to fall in love, and then by the end they kind of all do fall in love. So that was interesting, and I think I will pick it up again because I didn't read it as I was listening to it, and so I kind of got lost in who was who and what was happening. So I think I will come back to it. I gave it 3 stars because it's still just not my favorite, but it was better than some of the other ones that I've read of his. And then we get to a 5-star read of this month. I really enjoyed this one, okay? The Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov. So Isaac Asimov was a scientist and a science fiction writer. He was one of the most prolific writers. I think he wrote over like 5,000 things if you include like all his nonfiction, his fiction, his letters, all that. He's most well known for his Foundation series. Well, all of his sci-fi books actually happen in the same universe and they're all tied together. So The Caves of Steel is part of his robot series, and they're about if we had positronic brains, basically robots that were very, very similar to humans. And he even wrote like a prequel called I, Robot that you might have heard about, and that's him kind of just putting out this idea of what if we had robots, and here's the 3 laws that these robots would have to live by, that they would have to protect people, protect themselves. Can't remember the other one. I read this one because it has that dynamic of 2 characters working together who really don't like each other, but yet they have to work together and to solve this case. And I really got drawn into the world and really appreciated this sci-fi, not dystopian, but kind of in the feeling of like 1984 type book. So I really was shocked with this one because I didn't think I was going to like anything that was like this, but somehow it was so good. His writing is really well done. I did listen to this one, and so if you listen to it, the narrator is amazing. Highly would recommend that. and I was captivated throughout the whole book, so that was really cool. So it reminded me a little bit of Disney's Tomorrowland movie mixed with a little bit of 1984, all these kind of new inventions, but yet the world is kind of set back and they don't understand a lot of things about living together and love and friendship. And I'm really was excited to read the next one, which actually is my next book that I read, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. So this is The Naked Sun, book 2 of the series, and I was let down a little bit. I was hoping that the series would stay going the entire time, but I was kind of disappointed. This one takes place on another planet, so it's the same characters from the first one, and he's going to a different planet and solving a different case. And I thought it was really interesting just in the way that Asimov writes. You can see the point he was trying to get across and what he was trying to like help prick in people's minds and consciences, I guess. So there's the planet of Earth, and it's very different from what we know as Earth today, but it's like, what if Earth was like this 100 years, 200 years in the future? And then there's other planets that are colonized, and they have a very different culture, very different way they lived. So on this other planet, they all live completely separately. Like the ratio to humans to robots is like 1 to 1,000. There's one human who lives in their house with this massive like plantation, and then there will be another human way off. So there's almost no human interaction. They don't ever actually see each other. They call it viewing because they have basically, what's it called? Like in Star Wars where they have the holograph, is it hologram? That kind of communication, like you can just see someone standing there, but they're not actually there, and so they freak out if anyone like touches them or anything. So they're trying to solve this murder whenever no one can actually be close to another human being, so therefore no murder could have happened, which makes it really interesting to see him trying to solve the case whenever everyone just believes, well, obviously it can't have happened. And I just like how he answers so many questions in the book, like what would happen if we all just weren't comfortable with seeing each other in person? What if the government controlled when we had kids and how many kids we had, which is really weird. That's where it gets into like Brave New World with the government like telling you when you can have kids, and then they take the fetus like at just a couple of weeks after conception and they raise it in this facility, and then they don't even know who their parents are or anything. So that was kind of interesting. And then also like on Earth, so on Earth every person is a follower, and there's no open space, which kind of reminded me of like we might be getting there because we don't go outside a lot and we all like to stay in our houses, and so then the people on Earth actually get scared of what is outside and the sun and everything, and so they build like these massive domes to hold the cities in and protect them from the open air. So I thought that was interesting. Overall, I did enjoy this book, but the reason why I knocked off a star is because I feel like he had a much more older audience than the first one. The first one you can read as a standalone, you don't have to read the rest of the series, and I feel like anyone could enjoy that, whereas the second one, definitely, it focused on the lack of having human desires. Kind of the whole point of the story was that there should be no desire for another human being, and that's gross and that's animal. So there's some conversations that I feel like are definitely more mature. It still remains pretty clean, although there is one character who in the first few chapters there is some implied nudity, although it is a book, so obviously it's a little different than watching a movie or something. Some kind of awkward moments. I did start listening to the third one and it got too weird for me and I quit reading that. So I would highly recommend the first one, maybe the second one, and then I personally didn't want to go past that. Okay, and then the last 2 books for August, and I'm already at 20 minutes, wow. The Excellent Wife by Martha Peace. I actually didn't read this one in August. I read it back in the summer, and then I was going to go back and finish the appendices, and I never did, and I found it laying around and finished it and marked it as read. So this one, I would definitely recommend it for any Christian woman to read. Obviously, I'm not a wife yet, and it was still very impactful to me, very convicting. Basically, the whole perspective of the book is submission, so how everything connects to submission, how we can understand marriage, how to communicate, so many different things. I'll definitely be coming back to this book and will recommend it. I gave it 4 stars, I think. And then the last book is Deeper, which I did end up giving 5 stars. I really like this series. Gentle and Lowly and Rejoice and Tremble are also in this series, and if you know me, you know that Gentle and Lowly is one of my favorite books. I really enjoyed Deeper. This is by the author Dane Ortlund, and it was just, his writing is so good, and he very clearly lays out what sanctification is and how we can grow closer to God, how we can grow deeper in our knowledge of Him. And he goes through and just, the titles of his chapters are just one word, and he goes through all these different things that are so useful, and they keep coming back to me ever since I finished this book in different conversations, different circumstances. So he talks about Jesus, who Jesus is, despair, union, embrace, acquittal, honesty, pain, breathing, and supernaturalized. So I feel like that's kind of a little teaser into what this book is about, but those words don't really make sense separate from each other and what you learn in this book. So I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great book on how to learn to love Christ more, because I ask that question a lot, and I feel like a lot of people I counsel or have conversations with really want to know, how do I grow deeper in my knowledge of God? So I feel like I will definitely be coming back to this. And one of the biggest things I took away from it is that we have to look to Christ. We have to truly understand who He is and what He did for us and our union with Him. And then that's when we grow to love Him more, but not without the Spirit's help in us. So it's kind of like a summary of the whole book. Really enjoyed this, highly recommend. So those are all the 11 books that I read in the month of August. Definitely turned out to be a long video. I really can't contain this into a short video, the more books that I read, but I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking about these books, and a lot of the reasons why I am motivated to read so much is just to let you guys know what books are good and recommend what you should read, what you shouldn't read, what you should stay away from. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up and click the subscribe button, and I will see you next week. Bye!